In this video, we'll be helping you pick
All
the
right,
best
you guys.
class for Diablo 4.
So there's a lot of these best class videos that are coming out right now for Diablo 4 just because the release is right around the corner. And I wanted to go through a lot of them with you. This one in particular, I thought was very, very good, even if you played in the beta, because there's been a lot of changes that have happened since the beta. And this one goes over what powers have been nerfed, which ones have been beefed up some, and it goes over the different classes quite well. So, you know, unfortunately, I haven't been privy of the game that's going to be coming out, the updated game with all of the patches and everything else, like some of these other creators. So this is a chance for us to see what's happening with the classes.
Or with a unique twist that we've played all classes at endgame with multiple builds per class, so we can show you how they play and feel much later on. All classes are perfectly capable and powerful at endgame if you know how to build them. Some classes may have a slower start than others, but as you get your special skills and loot, you'll find they all grow really well.
Yeah, I mean, even from the betas, right, we've only had a chance to either level up to 25 or level 20. That doesn't really give us a good idea of how strong these different classes are going to be once they get up to level 100. So a lot of these guys that have had a chance to play, develop their characters for a few days, get up to that type of level, have a much better idea of how the real game is going to play.
Many people are considering there is an established tier list already, but the reality is that your enjoyment will come from the playstyle you pick, so understanding your chosen class is an important.
Yeah, I saw a tier list that was actually put out. It wasn't published by Asmongold, but he covered it, and really it kind of had as top of the line top of the line essentially was I think it was sorcerer and rogue in terms of gameplay. Honestly, barbarian, until it's proven otherwise, barbarian is likely going to be the most powerful class, just like in the other Diablos, right? So we're likely expecting that until it's proven otherwise. Now, we know that in the betas, the barbarian didn't perform that well because he could only level up to level 25. But all of the developers said, like, don't worry about it. Barbarian gets much more powerful in these later levels.
Decision. This is a summary of each class paired with an endgame performance to help you pick. Up first, we'll take a look at the Sorceress or Sorcerer. The Sorceress or Sorcerer are intelligence-based caster classes. They're perfect for players that enjoy controlling the battlefield and that like to deal elemental damage. Players that enjoy having plenty of effects on screen, such as freezing and then exploding something, or burning something, or electrocuting and stunning enemies, will love this class. Users that like to use stationary spells that deal damage over an area of effect while using another skill to focus on a single target will also enjoy it. The Sorceress relies heavily on a smart combination of skills and equipment, and usually requires to spend a couple of skills on survivability because of their low health. Players that enjoy glass cannon builds might enjoy this for this reason as well. The enchantment system allows players to enjoy the effective skills even while they're not directly using them, providing a lot of gameplay variety. This allows users to enjoy benefits of skills they might like even while not playing with that specific skill. The main playstyles for the Sorcerer or Sorceress are Pyromancer, focusing on pyromancy skills for low health but high regen and burst DPS damage.
Yeah, for me, I get how some people like to build a theme for their specific character. I always like, if I pick a class, I like to build whatever is going to be the most effective and whatever is the play style that I like, rather than building upon a theme. So you'll see people that all they do is they build, like a pyro sorcerer or an ice sorcerer, and they stick to these specific abilities, even if they're not necessarily best suited for the way that they like to play. I don't think that's necessarily, people can play however they want, right? So that's fine if they decide they want to play that way, but that's not the way that I play personally.
Pairs up with AoEs and is a thrilling kind of gameplay with plenty of spectacle. Freeze and control. Focus on controlling the battlefield by freezing and slowing enemies. Players that want to dominate the battlefield with control spells will be able to freeze everything on screen and deal massive damage to them. Lightning and speed. The Sorcerer's Teleport has always been a coveted and unique mechanic of the class, and Diablo 4 makes Lightning Sorcerers masters of speed by giving special legendaries that benefit from movement speed bonuses.
The lightning sorcerer, that's actually my favorite. I like these speed classes. I like these characters that can teleport or that can hit a whole bunch of enemies all at the same time. That's fun for me. So definitely the lightning sorcerer, that's my favorite so far out of the sorcerer class.
The Lightning Sorceress is a speed clear rusher's dream. And finally, Master of the Elements. Players that enjoy inflicting different types of status ailments and combining them together and using plenty of barriers will become essentially immortal. The pros of this class are battlefield control, skills that provide many options without requiring aspects, different types of elemental damage, high damage, and guided gameplay that's easy for new users to keep track of what they should do with their skills, like for example sticking to a single element. The cons are limited equipment space, limiting the amount of aspects you can use, low health depending on skills or barriers to stay alive, and some builds might get repetitive since you can control the field so well it's a bit like shooting fish in a barrel, and less resource generation mechanics than other classes, and higher elemental consumption often end in wait times in between pulls. We recommend the Pyromancer Sorceress for a great mix of damage and fanfare. Next we come to the Necromancer. Necromancers are the
Yeah, I played a pyro sorcerer in the beta and it was okay. Like I don't know. Some of the abilities that they had was it was lackluster. If you're the reason you get into the sorcerers because it's like there's these big explosions and all this stuff, and I just didn't feel like the pyro type magical spells really kind of hit the mark like some of the other like electricity spells or ice spells, stuff like that.
Summoner class of Diablo 4, and they can play ranged or melee with intelligence being their main stat. Players that enjoy having summons and minions will be more inclined to play this class. Necromancers often stay on the back of the battlefield while providing support to their minions and using powerful skills to destroy or weaken their enemies. They have a unique corpse mechanic that is kind of mandatory to use, so players will often need to manage multiple resources at the same time, being essence, corpses, minions' health.
This is the Necromancer is actually, I know some people really like the Necromancer. It's my least favorite type of class just because it's you have the least control over the attacking of specific enemies. It's like if you just want to be there pressing buttons to get through the game and you don't want to develop any actual skills associated with your different abilities. I mean, yes, Necromancer does take some skill in order to play, but it's just it's a little bit more self-guided. You know what I mean? All of these NPCs that are helping you out. And it's just, I don't know. Some people like that, I guess.
Etc., and they can also generate blood orbs, which act as an additional resource. Players that enjoy tactical gameplay will enjoy this playstyle, as minions will deal with the front lines, allowing the Necromancer to plan and control what's happening from a safe distance. Users that get overwhelmed with everything happening on the screen will not enjoy most builds that Necromancers use. The Necromancer also allows to play solo by sacrificing part of all of your minions, greatly boosting your own power.
Yeah, I like that. Like if, let's say you're a Necromancer and you're constantly sacrificing your minions to make yourself more powerful or to make yourself less vulnerable, that is somewhat interesting to me, because then you're relying less on these NPC guys, you know, doing all the work for you, and instead you're using them more as like pawns to just like regenerate yourself and make yourself more powerful.
While it doesn't have many playstyles as other characters, each of them feels very unique. The Necromancer's unique mechanic is the Book of the Dead, which allows you to personalize each minion type to fit your current build. You can also sacrifice each type of minion for increased stats. For survivability, it mainly uses its minions to stay safe. While playing alone, it has a lot of ways to greatly increase its HP and even fortify itself, similar to the Barbarian. The main playstyles available.
Yeah, I didn't play as a Necromancer during the beta, but from what I remember, I watched a lot of other videos that were talking about the Necromancer and different class builds, and I believe there was one build particularly with the blood magic where the Necromancer could essentially become invulnerable. And I don't know if that got nerfed or not during the server slam, but I imagine it probably got toned down some, because that was even at just like level 25, and all of a sudden he was invincible.
Available to the Necromancer are solo overpower burst damage. This build sacrifices your minions for increased health and damage. You'll use the overpower mechanic to quickly annihilate all enemies while boosting your own stats to stay alive. Corpse Explosion. This build generates as many corpses as possible and explodes them to deal either static damage or damage over time. Players will need to control the battlefield and use minions to stay safe. Summoner. This build focuses around your minions and increasing their damage by debuffing enemies and inserting aspects that increase their power. And lastly, Mage DPS. This can either be a solo player or a hybrid between minions and spells using the minions as a shield.
I like how he actually gives titles and labels for each of the different class builds. That's pretty cool. That's one of the things that I like about this video when they go into the different classes.
Use bone spells that focus around critical damage to quickly destroy elites and bosses. The pros of this class are that it's a very safe playstyle using minions while staying behind them. It has a variety of very distinct builds, and it's good early game and noob friendly since your minions will do the work for you while you learn.
Yeah, do you really want some of your minions doing the work for you? I mean, is that what you want? Why are you even playing the game if you want minions doing the work for you? You know, that's why it's just, I like to be hands-on with whatever it is that I'm doing when I'm going through and attacking enemies.
The cons are that it can get overwhelming to manage all resources and mechanics. You usually have long cooldowns. For high-level play, it requires a good comprehension of build mechanics when using minions. It's highly dependent on equipment to make some builds work, and it has a limited amount of aspects due to equipment slots. Druids are nature mages that can summon companions, shapeshift, and command the elements to destroy their foes. Their main stat is willpower, which not only increases their skill damage, but also increases their overpower damage, synergizing very well with some of the skills that they used. Similar to the rogue, the druid is a jack-of-all-trades style of class that allows you to quickly shift back and forth between a melee or casting type of playstyle. Players who like to use melee skills while also casting powerful spells will find this class to be right up their alley.
Yeah, I feel like the druid really is a good cross between essentially the sorcerer and what is it? The barbarian, right? What I worry is that the druid is not going to be as powerful as the barbarian at later levels. Like, I think it'll still be able to perform well, and will still be like a really beefy type of character. I still see the druid being like a good class, but you know, I think the barbarian, once the barbarian starts really getting super powerful items, he's going to surpass the druid.
Alley. Druids in particular have exceptional AoE damage, but lack a little bit of single target damage that can make them difficult to play against facing one powerful enemy like a boss, particularly in the early goings of the game. They also have a typically slow start compared to many of the other classes, and learning to manage spirit, which is the resource of the druid, can be exceptionally difficult to do for new players until they get the hang of the class. Spirit boons are the unique mechanic of the druid, allowing them to bond to different spirits in the game, providing them with unique passive bonuses that sometimes can change a build entirely. Tinkering with these spirit boons and adjusting them depending on what build you're playing is a huge part of playing the druid build, and it can be really fun for those who love to min-max and tinker with builds, but might be a little tedious for those that just want to put something on autopilot and play.
Yeah, that's actually fun for me. I like to tinker around with my character's abilities. You know, it's like if you can switch one or two little things and all of a sudden you dramatically increase the amount of damage that you do, or if you're really strategic with just saying like, okay, this super early ability is likely to give me, you know, 30% chance of critical strike, and then this over here increases my damage of critical strike by 15%, and then this one, you know, is more likely to increase damage on critical strike. All these different things, you know, you compound things, and to get that type of build, you really kind of have to almost diagram it out. You know, you get a piece of paper, you write it down, and that's fun for me. And you know, that's why I actually even tried to avoid watching a lot of the videos where they tell you like, okay, if you want the most powerful damage, like go in, pick this ability, and this ability, and all this, because then it kind of takes out the fun of trying to figure that out and discover it for myself.
For survivability, druids not only use barriers, but they also use the fortify mechanic, not unlike the barbarian and necromancer, to prevent a lot of damage dealt to them, and while also increasing their damage at the same time. Playstyles available to the druid are werewolf, which allows them to shift into a very powerful werewolf that focuses on dealing critical damage and dealing damage over time with poisons. Poisons in this game stack, so it allows them to get a lot of damage over time on a lot of enemies simultaneously. Werebear, which is another melee-focused build that has a huge focus on overpower, dealing incredible burst damage but doesn't have sustained DPS, meaning that you have very big spikes of damage, but you have very slow amounts of time in between those spikes.
I like spike damage. I mean, we'll see how it ends up playing out, but spike damage is the most fun for me. You know, sometimes though, like, it can be difficult to get in. What's great about like the long-term damage, if you poison something and then it continues to do damage, is on these bosses where maybe it's tough to get in close to them on every opportunity possible to be able to get, put damage on them. So we'll see how it ends up playing out with the druid, but my favorite so far is the bear.
Spikes. Then there's using nature magic between earth, lightning, and physical damage spells that deal damage from afar, allowing you to play as a pure caster while protecting yourself with barriers. And then lastly is a hybrid style of...
I'm not a big fan of the barrier magic type stuff, where it's like you create a barrier and then you go hide behind it and then you do something from a distance. I like doing like distance style attacks, but not so much incorporating barriers. I much rather have something where it's like I can teleport or go through enemies quickly, get on the other side, kind of maybe leave a trail of traps or something like that.
Play where you mix and match spell casting with shape-shifting in the terms of werewolf or werebear, with some storm or nature skills allowing you to get the best of both worlds. The pros of this class are that they can summon companions not unlike the necromancer, though to a lesser extent. They also have a wider variety of playstyles compared to some other classes in the game. They can reach exceptionally high damage late game if built correctly, and they are rather tanky compared to some other classes.
Yeah, kind of like what I was saying. You know, later in the game, they're tanky. They're going to be good later in the game, but you're going to have to tinker to get them to really do a lot of damage. Now, you might... the difference between this and maybe the barbarian is with the druid, you're going to need to tinker around with all of the different special skills in order to get them to do a lot of damage, where with the barbarian, you might need to tinker around with all of the different legendary items or epic items that you pick up to get it to do the most amount of damage. So, but I still think we'll see who's more powerful late game. I still think it's going to be barbarian.
The cons are that they can start out extremely slow compared to other classes, making them feel sluggish in the early parts of the game, primarily because spirit gain is hard to navigate when you're first learning the class, and this can give you a lot of downtime in between skills. Additionally, synergies between skills are not always inherently obvious, making trial and error a must for anyone playing a druid build. Some of the playstyles available to the druid are extremely legendary aspect dependent, so even though they seem like they would be good, if you don't have the right equipment, a lot of times they will underperform. And lastly, druids have a limited amount of aspects due to having less equipment slots than rogues and barbarians. Barbarians are a strength-based melee class.
Isn't that crazy? They have less spots than rogues and barbarians. You would think that they would at least be tied with rogue, but I guess not. I don't know why they did that. I mean, I guess they had other plans on how to make them a powerful, beefy character.
They are perfect for people who like to fight up close and feel the power of their skills on the enemies they face, and there are no ranged weapons for the barbarians, so you are forced to fight face to face. Players that enjoy the adrenaline of constantly taking and dealing damage while getting the satisfaction to destroy everything and move really fast will enjoy this character. Barbarians have very high health, and they also provide access to the fortified mechanic, which relies on the amount of health you have versus the amount of damage you've taken. Players that enjoy managing their health will enjoy this mechanic, but others may feel it kind of dull and not rewarding. The main playstyles of barbarians are Whirlwind Barbarian, and this...
Yeah, I mean, most people are going to experiment with Whirlwind Barbarian. That is essentially the quintessential, the favorite type of build for Barbarian, and has been for how many Diablo games now? So, you know, some people really want that. Asmongold, I mean, that's why he's in it, right? He's in it to play a Whirlwind Barbarian. So, and people like that consistency cross games as they, you know, develop new games, new levels, and add some variability to the characters, but kind of keep a lot of the elements the same as the earlier versions.
Allows you to quickly maneuver the battlefield to defeat big packs of enemies. It's very fun for users that mainly enjoy defeating multiple enemies at the same time and don't like to stand in a single place. Instead of focusing on combinations of skills, you simply move around the battlefield using shouts and repositioning on the best place to maximize efficiency. Since this highly relies on your equipment, you'll get a feeling of constant improvement while you get stronger and stronger. Bleeding skills. This allows you to apply massive damage over time on enemies, allowing you to simply strike and run to the next thing while you see enemies die on their own. Players that enjoy hit and run style tactics will enjoy this playstyle. Combo style damage.
Yeah, I like hit and run. I usually like it more so with Rogue, but hey, that is something that I'd like to try with the Barbarian, the kind of hit and run style tactic.
This playstyle revolves around combining different skills and aspects to create powerful one-shot combos that annihilate enemy groups. The arsenal system also encourages swapping weapons between different skills to gain bonuses. It's perfect for players that enjoy combo mechanics of building up a skill and then unleashing.
Combo style, meaning literally anything else, right? Literally any other type of combination except for what he was just talking about. So, yeah, I think what's cool about Diablo 4 is there's so many different types of class builds. There's lots of different types of skill types. So you can really build whatever you want, and a lot of different playing styles, even within each different class. So Barbarian definitely has that.
A devastating blow, as well as for users that like to constantly swap between different skills. And lastly, the support playstyle. While not frequent for ARPGs, shouts allow barbarians to greatly boost companion abilities as well as taunting enemies and tanking them, which might be appealing to some users, although this is obviously not a meta thing. In short, the pros of this build are that it fights up close, it has the arsenal system which allows you to swap between many different weapons, allowing you to theory craft equipment, and has access to more weapon slots.
Yeah, one of the things, like what he was saying about the support build, I mean, if you're going to be playing with friends, it's a good idea to at least have one person play as the Barbarian. It's almost a must in every type of group setting. So, you know, that's one reason why a lot of people, I think, kind of get into playing the Barbarian in the first place, is they're just like, well, you know, if I'm going to be playing with my buddies, one of us needs to be a Barbarian. I might as well get to know the character class and get some good items for a Barbarian class.
Slots, thus more offensive legendary aspects. The cons are that it doesn't have ranged attacks, it has a rather slow start, and requires a considerable amount of character planning. We recommend the Whirlwind Barbarian for a good amount of fun and speed clearing with unique barb gameplay. Up next is the Rogue. The Rogue is a versatile deck.
Rogue has essentially been my favorite class. It was good during the beta. But during the server slam, I felt like the Rogue got majorly nerfed, like big time. And that same weekend, the weekend of the server slam, I did a brand new PC build. I got all my items that Friday. So I, you know, started my build middle of the afternoon on Friday. I was trying to get it done to participate in the server slam, get the Ashava horn. And I finally got it all done, started playing middle of Saturday, and I didn't get to level 20 till 1, 2 a.m. And then at 3 a.m., the second to the last appearance to Ashava, because I'm on the West Coast time zone, I was the only person fighting the Ashava. And I changed around my skills literally while I was in the process of changing around my skills to fight the Ashava. When the Ashava appeared, I had all of my keys messed up. Anyways, I ended up dying to the Ashava. And I have to tell you, I was so freaking pissed. Because I've spent so much hours trying to build this PC, get it all done, get in, get to level 20, get to that Ashava so I could get that Ashava horn, and I freaking blew it. I blew it in the on the goal line. I blew it on the goal line.
Dexterity and critical class. It's a very mobile character, and it's sort of a jack of all trades, as it can fight in melee or at range. It crowd controls enemies and debuffs them, as well as performing AoE and single target damage. Players that like constantly smashing buttons to quickly move through the battlefield and continuously casting skills will enjoy this style of play, while players that get confused by many buttons will hate it. Players that like to swap between different...
Yeah, that's one of the things. You have to be really comfortable with your button set. If you're playing the Rogue, which is what I was talking about. I was switching up all of my different skills right before I fought the Ashava, and I got in there and I was like trying to hit different, different keystrokes and stuff, and like everything was messed up, and I was just frustrated the heck out of me. And the rogue isn't beefy, so the Ashava, I go in and I'd run out of what is it, like the shadow power, whatever, right? He bites me, and then I'm trying to like rush in to get underneath him, and then he bites me again, and that was it, and I was dead.
Different play styles will be able to do so, as they can quickly respec from range to melee while keeping similar mechanics. Rogues have a very wide range of builds, but most of them are specific and require min-maxing, which negates the possibility to play around with them as much. Rogue has a somewhat higher skill cap compared to other classes to be played correctly, and will be more appreciated by users that want to be focused over players that enjoy chilling. Rogues don't...
Yeah, one of my big worries is that the rogue isn't going to be super good late game. I think he's going to be pretty good like mid game. I don't feel like he was very good early game. I feel like he was pretty good level 25 when he's with the right legendary weapons. He's good. He could do a lot of damage. But level 20, I was just like, man, like he was struggling. He was struggling in the server slam.
Don't have high health and have better dodge mechanics than other characters, as well as having some skills that greatly reduce damage taken. The best way to stay alive is to remain mobile and keep enemies crowd controlled or far away. The specialization mechanic provides even more options, allowing you to swap between combo points, which enhances your main skills, inner sight, which forces you to attack specific enemies to build up a bar, and once that bar is full, you'll have a grace period to enjoy unlimited energy, and preparation, which reduces your ultimate cooldowns and resets other cooldowns while using ultimates.
Yeah, the ultimate energy, that was nice. It's something that you have to get really comfortable with in terms of how, killing the targeted enemy, all of that stuff. I mean, again, it's one of those things like you have to be super on the ball in terms of your, your key, what your keys are set to, and making sure that you're attacking the right enemy all the time in order to stay, constantly have your power regenerated.
The main playstyles of this build are Shadow Imbuement, which imbues your attacks with a debuff that causes explosions, dealing a ton
very
of
good
damage.
Very good. Shadow Imbuement in the betas was very good. We'll see how it is in the live.
This can be played both melee and ranged, and requires you to group up enemies to execute the explosion. Players that like setting up a combo and exploding it at the right time to kill everything in a single strike will enjoy this playstyle. Poison Imbuement deals very high damage in the form of poison, quickly dealing damage over time. Good against groups of enemies and even better against bosses, and players that enjoy damage over...
Yeah, I noticed that the poison seemed pretty good against bosses. I was kind of telling you about that in terms of what's going on with the druid. The druid has the werewolf. You go in, you poison stuff, and it's good against bosses because you don't know when you're going to be up close, being able to make an attack on the boss again. I mean, obviously you're going to be able to get up close eventually, but it's nice when you can just put down some type of trap or poison an enemy, and then it just continuously does damage over time, and you can kind of prep for that, fall back, kind of regroup and rethink about your strategy of where you're going to go to attack next, if you need to heal yourself, all of that.
Over time to quickly deal with bosses will enjoy this build. Trapper. Set down traps on the battlefield that deal poison damage and burst damage in combination with crowd control skills to keep yourself safe. Players that like hit and run mechanics will enjoy this build. And burst crit damage. Either from melee, ranged, or hybrid, you can make burst DPS damage on single targets, take advantage of debuffs and passives. Players will need to constantly move through the battlefield to engage and disengage enemies, and players that like to kite will enjoy this playstyle. The pros of this class is that they're the jack of all trades. They have many options and can quickly transition from one build to another by respecking. They allow for a play style of ranged and melee.
You can change between any class can respec pretty quickly, so it's not that difficult. But yeah, there's tons of different ways to play the rogue, or more so than what people expected, right? People didn't expect like this really powerful melee rogue, but hopefully, I mean, because rogue, just like we talked about, he's not beefy. So if they're going to make him, they need to make sure that the melee rogue deals a ton of freaking damage. Like if you're going to have like a character that dies in a couple hits, you need to make sure that if it's a melee build of that character, that they do more damage than the beefy characters when they're up close.
Which most classes don't allow. They're very mobile, allowing you to quickly reposition yourself on the battlefield. They have many crowd control options as well as survivability options, and they have a good amount of equipment slots, allowing you to stack many offensive aspects. The cons are they are very narrow or specific builds. They require a lot of concentration to play. They require players to constantly move and smash keys, and depending on the build, it might have a very mechanic-heavy gameplay. So that...
Yeah, I noticed. So during the betas, I played a druid and I played a rogue, and they played very, very different. I'll tell you what, like the druid definitely felt much easier to play, much easier. And during the server slam, I also built a sorcerer, and man, the sorcerer, super early on, I mean, just clearing the entire screen of enemies with like the different types of lightning attacks. It was like night and day compared to the rogue. I felt like early on with the rogue, it always felt like, I mean, I could kill all the enemies. It wasn't so difficult, but definitely couldn't clear the room very quickly. Sorcerer could start clearing rooms like this early on in the game. Very, very fast. So we'll see what happens once we can level past 25. I'm excited to play.
Wraps up our video on the best class for you, showing you some of the end game.
I've got
classes, so
another video for you guys. So there's some different things I want to share with you, right? So I got like, I wanted to go over some of the different stuff going on with the Diablo, because I didn't know about this until I looked it up today in terms of what's going on with the, let's see, the server. I'm going to try and refit my screen for you guys a little bit so you can kind of see better. Okay. It's all over the place. All right. So this is, there's some new release stuff. I haven't watched this yet. This should be fun watching the new trailer.
Whatever you can do, we beg you.
Will you save us?
The Diablo, man. It's a game. It brings us together. My brother-in-law, he plays with his family all the time. He's, you know, his 70-year-old dad, and he's in his mid-40s, and then he's got, you know, his nephews.
Will you fight the darkness?
Please end the terror.
Sanctuary. Have you guys seen? So they're selling like a Lilith statue. That's out now. Looked pretty cool. I don't know if any of you guys are into collectibles. I'm a little bit into collectibles. I don't know if you noticed. I got some different comics back there. I got a Cam Neely jersey. Anyways, so I actually I like collectibles, especially memorabilia type stuff that you know, brings back memories of when I was a kid. That's what I try to collect. Okay, so let's see. I want to talk to you guys about the Twitch drops. So if you guys are into streaming, if you're watching this channel and if you've made it this far, you're obviously into streaming. So let's go ahead and look at these Twitch drops, because this just barely came out just like a week ago, telling you about what the Twitch drops are, when you need to be watching Diablo being played on Twitch to get the drops. So let's get into it. All right, Twitch drops. Traversing Sanctuary is a treacherous experience rife with mind-shattering horrors and danger. So from June 5th to July 2nd. All right, so you have almost an entire month. You essentially have a month where you can watch Diablo 4 streamers on Twitch, and you'll earn Twitch drops each week. So essentially, it sounds like it's probably going to be 4 weeks. I'd have to count them out, but probably 4 weeks. And then for each week, if you put in the time watching your favorite Twitch streamer play Diablo 4, you're going to get some drops. So let's see. There should be... It's right over here. Let me look for it. Diablo Immortal. Here we go. Twitch drops. All right. Week 1 Twitch drops. Rogue and Necromancer. If you have no plans of playing Rogue or Necromancer, then I guess you don't need to watch, right? Okay. June 5th, 4 p.m. End time, June 11th at 12 p.m. Watch at least 3 hours of eligible Diablo 4 content while this Twitch drop is active to earn the Azure Hand Backstabber Dagger and Azure Hand Heart-Pierced Sword weapon recolors for all your demon stabbing needs. Keep up the momentum for a total of 6 hours to earn the Matron Sigil Coffer, Rogue, and Progenitor Faber Necromancer back trophy. Very cool. Okay. So week 2 drops. I imagine it's the same thing. 3 hours and 6 hours. You get the Azure Hand spell Slinger. All right. So that's what you're going to get. You guys can read through this right here. Azure Hand spell Slinger, Wand Weapon Recolor, and the Hell Ruin Tabernacle back trophy. So this one's only for the sorcerer. All right. So I guess what's cool about this one is you get both Rogue and Necromancer first week, and then the sorcerer the second week. So if you're going to do any of them, I mean, this one seems like the most rewarding, right? Because you get drops for both classes. Okay, third week is the Druid, and you're going to get the Azure Hand Head Cleaver Weapon Recolor, and you're also going to get the Font of the Mother Back Trophy. Okay, and then fourth week, Barbarian, Azure Hand Skull Crusher, and the Matriarch's Mantle Back Trophy. Support a streamer. Hey, looks like if you donate to these streamers, you get something. So from June 5th, you can also show your support to eligible Diablo 4 creators by gifting their channel 2 Twitch subscriptions of any tier. Doing so will earn you the rugged Primal Instinct mount as a reward. Man, I need to start streaming on Twitch more. I have in the past. I'm not right now. Okay. So anyways, that is more free stuff. People like free stuff. I like free stuff. I'm probably going to participate in this, even if I have it in the background while I'm playing, you know, or while I'm streaming or something else. Maybe I can watch myself on stream. Who knows? I don't know how that works. All right. So I showed you this video, which is a great one. Man, this one was by Effects True Life. Okay. He does some great coverage. I really like how he broke down all of the different classes, especially for the live that's about to come up. And Riker has a lot of insights. He's been granted early access to the live game, and so I wanted to go over his class guide that he put out today. So let's watch this one.
With a class overview video for Diablo 4 to help you pick what class to play. The different classes offer different gameplay experiences, and you want to ensure that you pick the class that'll be most fun for you. In this video, we'll give an overview of every class, its primary playstyle, some of its...
Riker's been doing a good job, man. He's putting in the legwork as a creator to really kind of keep us updated on everything going on with Diablo 4. I can appreciate that, and his channel has really prospered and really benefited from it.
Key skills and specializations, as well as notable strengths and weaknesses. If you want to skip ahead to specific classes, I'll have timestamps in the description. If you're still on the fence about buying Diablo 4, be sure to check out my review video, and if you did get the game, check out my guide explaining all the new mechanics like lucky hit, fortify, overpower, and more. Also, turn on subscription notifications to be alerted when new Diablo 4 videos go live. But before I move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, GNC. GNC is partnering with creators like me in the gaming space to
just
help
so you can
shape the
see.
future of gaming nutrition. In my gameplay, I like to optimize my
I'll
performance,
move
and
this
physical
so you can
performance
see it.
is
There
a
you go.
natural extension of that, because it doesn't matter how much knowledge or strategy I have. If
Get your
I'm
vitamin,
tired or
guys.
sluggish,
I hope you're
put that in
eating very
gears. We want to
nutrient.
support and improve energy.
I hope you're eating lots of nutrient dense foods. Okay, that's important. So yeah, and taking your supplements, that's important too.
Focus, manage stress, promote healthy, easy snacking, and quality sleep, and just overall wellness. So I've worked with GNC to create this list of my favorite products. These are what have kept me going through long gaming sessions, all-nighters working on videos, and marathon streams. I need my daily caffeine to get me going in the morning, and sometimes I need an extra kick to keep me.
I like it when companies like this actually work directly with creators to create not necessarily their own line, but a package of stuff like that they like, so they can say like, hey, I have a very similar lifestyle to my viewers, most likely. Here's what I eat. Now you can see this person that's, sponsoring my channel can design something for them.
Focused and alert later in the day. So we got here Divine Peach flavored G Fuel and Phase Pop Ghost Energy. These are zero sugar and low cal
I didn't know that GNC carried G Fuel. That surprises me.
or zero cal drinks that taste great. And while I do love coffee, it's summer. It's too hot for coffee. Then I have 4 flavors
Nice coffee.
of the GNC layered lean bars. I can't get enough of these things. They taste like delicious candy bars, but they're loaded with protein. I try to intake 100 grams of protein daily because protein is real fuel for the body. It keeps you full and sustained when I'm low on time and I'm grinding content or doing.
Yeah, guys. One of the things is, so your body, they've done some studies on this where if you don't intake enough protein, you're constantly going to be feeling hungry. So these people that are like constantly like snacking on chips and empty calories and everything else, you're going to keep snacking on chips all day long until you get your protein in, which is how a lot of people really balloon up. So it's important, focus on getting your protein intake throughout the day and your fats, and then, see if you still have a desire for a cookie or something like that. That's fine every once in a while. I'm actually on the carnivore diet right now. So I'm not taking in any types of carbs, but just something to keep in mind. So you keep your hand out of that cookie jar, out of that chips bag for all day long.
Doing a marathon stream, I basically live on these bars. They have an even wider selection of flavors than these, but these are 4 of my favorites. The Girl Scout Thin Mints, the Cookies and Cream, the Girl Scout Toastier, and my personal S+ tier, the Cookie Dough. And then to shake up the sweet with some salty and spicy, because I love my spice, we got the hot and spicy tortilla style protein chips. Outside of this, we've been working together with GNC, testing their products, giving them feedback to help shape the future of gaming nutrition. So stay tuned for some exclusive products built for gamers by gamers coming this summer. If you want to pick up any GNC products, scan the QR code on screen or follow the link in the description and use code RAGGER15 to get a discount on any single item.
Hey, Single Class 4, thanks for the comment. Yeah, Sorcerer class, man, it's freaking awesome, dude.
The Necromancer, the Rogue.
There are so many different types of, there's so many different types of builds with the Sorcerers. There's so many different types of builds. And what I really like about the Rogue is how maneuverable the rogue is. Like he can move around and pass through the enemies really quickly. But like the lightning sorcerer, man, he's so freaking cool, and he's just as quick, and he can destroy enemies super early on in the game. At least he could in the beta. So sorcerer class, when I played that during the server slam, dude, I couldn't believe how much better he played than the rogue early on in the early levels.
You can customize the appearance and the gender of your character, but the overall look and body type will remain recognizable as your base class. And even the gear you wear and your cosmetic options will represent your class's aesthetic. We'll note as well that Diablo 4 does not have traditional MMO class roles. Every class
I don't really care about like what my guy looks like, in terms of, I care about like the abilities on his legendary and epic items, what they actually do way more than the actual appearance. Because, how often am I clicking like the C button to bring it up and, change around items? I think it's kind of irrelevant during gameplay.
is DPS. There's no dedicated healer, no dedicated tank. In ARPGs, what we tend to see is support builds emerge rather than support classes. We also call these ZDPS or zero DPS builds, and they focus on taking skills that help the rest of their team deal more damage and or survive better. Now, as you go through every class,
Yeah, a lot of barbarians are going to be built just for that reason. I mean, a lot of people prefer to play as a barbarian because it's such a beefy class, and it is kind of fun to go out there and just like slaughter everything within a hit or two. But at some point, just if you're just doing Whirlwind over and over and over again, I would think that would get boring after a while.
we'll also talk about ultimates and key passives. Every class eventually unlocks ultimate skills on their skill tree. You don't have to pick an ultimate, and not all builds will use ultimates, because you do have to sacrifice a skill slot to fit in an ultimate into your build. And ultimates generally have very high cooldowns, roughly a minute. If you do pick an ultimate, you can only pick one. Then key passives are the final nodes on your skill tree. Again, you can only pick one, and these are generally so powerful that you will definitely want to pick one, and it can effectively define your build style. It's either you pick the key passive that best fits your build, or you make a build around a key passive. We'll also talk about each class's unique class mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, you can do the key passes kind of like, well, really, you need to focus on the skill tree about trying to find specific skills on the skill tree that are synergistic with each other, right? And every once in a while, you'll throw in something else that maybe gives you some type of added maneuverability or some type of added regeneration. But honestly, like, I'll tell you what, during the server slam, I was actually focused really heavily on trying to get some of these different things. They're not actual like skills, but they'll enhance your skills some. Like, they'll enhance your chance of critical strike, or they'll enhance how quickly your power regenerates, all these different things. So I was playing around a lot with those during the server slam. And I think that's actually a good way to go with rogues, especially, kind of like I was talking about, and just like in the last video, rogues, you really have to have your whole button layout figured out, and you're always really, it requires a lot of focus when you're going in to attack enemies, where if you build it in a way that you're only focused on like 2 or 3 skills rather than like 4, but you're putting like all of the rest of your extra points into these things where it's like increases the amount of damage you do, increases the amount of life you regenerate, all these other things, then you can make a much simpler rogue build that's also super powerful.
Every class has something special that other classes don't get, which significantly alters how the class feels or plays. So let's start with the barbarian.
He had early access to this game. I feel like he's giving the most generic. I love Riker. I mean, he's created some really good content on Diablo 4. I don't know if this is his best video so far.
This is your melee tough guy. If you want to be in the thick of battle, dishing out and taking tons of damage, this is the class for you. The barbarian has a lot of big melee attacks. There's a lot of potential to make bleed-based builds, which will deliver damage over time, so you can tag an enemy and keep moving while they bleed to death. You got some fan-favorite skills like
Yeah, hit and move. I like those types of builds. The bleed barbarian, that would be something that I'd be kind of interested in building and checking out.
Whirlwind that lets you deal damage while moving. You got defensive skills to buff yourself to stay alive in the midst of all these enemies, as well as skills that'll crowd control enemies. You have lots of war cries to buff yourself, buff your allies, nerf enemies, or even taunt enemies to aggro onto you. Basically, the barbarian is the closest Diablo 4 has to a traditional tank class. And he has a lot of skills to support a team, so I can't imagine support barbarians will become a thing. The barbarian also has gap closing skills like charge and leap to get into melee faster, or skills that bring enemies to you. The barbarian has 3 ultimates, which we'll showcase here. Call of the Ancients summons the spirits of 3 powerful barbarian warriors who join you in battle, increase.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But again, kind of like what I mentioned before, I'm not really big into these NPC characters that help you with the attack. It's like, well, why are you even playing the game? You know, as I'd like to be much more hands-on and have much more control of like what is going on with my particular attack strategies.
Increasing your damage output. Wrath of the Berserker makes you go Super Saiyan, and you temporarily gain a damage and a move speed buff, and you become immune to crowd control effects. Those 2 skills return from Diablo 3, but this new one, Iron Maelstrom, is really cool. You pop this 3 times in a row. The first time you pop it, it does a big ground slam, stunning enemies. The second time you pop it, it's a big swipe of damage in front of you. This inflicts a bleed. And then the final hit does a huge swing all around you. The Barbarian has 2 unique class mechanics, the Arsenal system and Weapon Expertise, which tie into one another. The Barbarian is the only class that has 4 weapon slots, one for a 2-handed blood.
Yeah, those weapon slots, they're going to be huge later on in the game once you get the epic items.
Bludgeoning weapon, one for a 2-handed slashing weapon, and then 2 slots for any combination of one-handed weapons, which are used for dual-wielding attacks. Different barbarian skills may require specific weapon types. Some skills let you use any kind of weapon. And with the arsenal system, you can actually choose to assign specific weapons to specific skills, or you can just let the game.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really going to make a difference, right? When you can assign specific weapons to specific skills, like all of a sudden, you're really going to be able to that creates a whole new dynamic in terms of how to create synergy between not just your skills, but the weapons that you incorporate at the same time.
Automatically pick for you. When you activate a skill, it automatically uses the weapon assigned to it. You don't have to manually weapon swap. Because barbarians get more item slots than any other class, that means they can stack more legendary properties than any other class. These are game-changing powers. Then the weapon expertise system is a progression system where using a specific weapon type gives you...
That is awesome. That is awesome. It's freaking awesome.
Experience with that weapon. You can level up each weapon type to level 10, and every level further increases a specific buff for that weapon type. For instance, 2-handed sword expertise makes you deal extra bleed damage on top of your normal damage while using 2-handed swords. But then you get to select one of those expertises for your technique slot. And the technique slot lets you gain that buff for all your weapons.
All right, I'm going to be honest. I find this is going to be confusing for the first little bit. I mean, you know, he can say it. He can say this as many times as he wants. It's going to take me a little bit to wrap my head around all these different mechanics, character mechanics. You know, it's just, I think it's going to take people quite a while to kind of get everything figured out and not just figured out, but dialed in at the same time. But that's part of the fun, right? Get out, buy a notepad. If you don't have a notepad, buy a freaking notepad, because this game mechanics, I mean, you're going to have to test things out to really kind of figure out the best builds.
Not just the weapon type that is assigned to it. So for instance, that bleed buff would apply even when you're not wielding a 2-handed sword. So you have this sort of mini game where you will be leveling up your weapon types, but also deciding which expertise best fits your build to apply to all your attacks. A barbarian's resource is called Fury. You start off with 0 Fury, and you generate Fury by either using certain skills or by taking damage. Once you're out of combat for a while, your Fury actually degenerates until it reaches 0. Fury management can be more difficult in the early game. You may find yourself needing to pick a few different skills to help with Fury generation. Barbarians have 4 key passives to choose from. Gushing Wounds is for bleed-based builds. Unbridled Rage is just a strict damage buff that can help any build. Unconstrained is for berserk-based builds. This is a buff that the Barbarian has a few ways of generating that is basically like the traditional RPG Barbarian Rage. It's a short buff that increases your damage and your move speed. And then Walking Arsenal encourages you to use all your different weapons, your entire arsenal, by giving you big buffs for doing so. Overall, Barbarians are a little slower to build up in the early game, but they become really strong in the end game.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the buffs where they reward you for using all of your different weapon arsenal is going to be pretty impressive.
Onto the Druid, the Master of Nature. The Druid offers a variety of playstyles. You can be a melee shapeshifter, a summoner, a caster, or some hybrid combination of any of these. As a shapeshifter, you can become either an agile werewolf or a tanky werebear. As a caster, you call upon the forces of nature to summon storm spells like lightning and hurricanes, or earth magic like landslides and big old boulders. With your summoner skills, you can call wolves and ravens to your side, as well as poisonous vines that creep around and...
Yeah, the summoner sounds pretty cool. I didn't try the summoner type build yet. That would be kind of fun to experiment with. I kind of feel, though, if you're going to be like a druid summoner, why not just be a sorcerer, right? So sorcerers are way more focused on... And I think that's kind of the problem with the druid, is he's kind of like a mashup. It's this mashup between like a barbarian or a sorcerer, and you kind of get some of the benefits of both, but really it's the people that hyper focus specific abilities that really end up creating a skill set that and a weapon set that deals immense amounts of damage. So I'm a little bit worried about the druid. I mean, I know that he's going to be tanky. I know that'll be useful later in the game with like epic items and all this type of stuff. But at the same time, like there's no way he's going to be as tanky and dealing as much damage with melee attacks as a barbarian. And he's not even going to get close to dealing the same type of damage as a sorcerer from distant attacks with his magic. So he kind of just, I don't know, he's kind of in this like nether region where it's, I'm a little bit worried about him.
Follow you. As a caster, you have defensive skills that can give you rock armor or tornado armor. And as a shapeshifter, you have different animal roars in your were forms to get defensive buffs. Overall, you're a class that focuses
I
on
like the pet wolves. I want wolves.
And poison damage. The druid
I like the wolves. I want pet wolves. I want that.
has 4 ultimates, which we'll show here. Cataclysm summons a massive storm that follows you, spawning twisters and lightning. Grizzly Rage turns you into an uber werebear for a short time, and killing enemies extends the duration. Lacerate turns you into a werewolf and makes you zip around the screen in a fraction of a second, dishing out 10 hits to enemies in the area. It feels like the 7-sided strike from the monk in Diablo 3, except it's 10-sided slash. Then Petrify is the earth magic ultimate. It encases enemies in stone, stunning them for 3 seconds, and giving you a better chance of landing crits on them. The druid's class mechanic is spirit boons. Basically, as you defeat enemies, you'll sometimes get druidic spirit offerings as drops. You collect these, and you gotta give them to 4 different spirit animals to unlock boons. Each animal spirit will give you a different buff. And with enough offerings, you can unlock up to 4 different boons per spirit.
That's
However,
cool.
You can only select 1 boon per spirit. But once you've unlocked all 16 boons, then you can activate 1 additional boon on 1 spirit for a total of 5 boons activated.
Oh,
The buffs of these
really?
boons will help shape your build. A druid's resource is called
I like that. I kind of like that nature magic thing that he's got going on. I mean, it's very appealing to me. It's not that I don't like the druid. I really like kind of the lore of the druid. I just worry about, you know, how effective he's going to be late in the game. We'll see. We'll see.
spirit. It neither passively generates nor degenerates. You need to use generator skills to build it up. And a lot of druid skills are resource heavy, so as you build up your character, you'll be looking for ways to better manage your resource, like through spirit boons. The druid's key passives include Bestial Rampage, which buffs your were forms, Earthen Might for earth magic casters that want to focus on the lucky hit mechanic, Again, I have a video explaining what Lucky Hit means. Lupine Ferocity, which is specifically for werewolf builds. Nature's Fury for caster druids that use both earth and nature magic. Perfect Storm for stormcasters. And Ursine Strength for pure werebear builds.
Yeah, and if you look at that, I mean, some things have really changed. Some of these abilities have gotten nerfed. I saw another video earlier today that went over all these. There was a new patch that was just released for the live, right? Just in the last couple days. And a lot of things got nerfed. A lot of things, got buffed. And so we'll see what ends up happening when things go live. But even like some of the things that he's talking about right now, I don't know how recently he got a lot of these different skills that he's now posting. I mean, if he, took screenshots of that even just like a few days ago, things might have changed,
Overall, druids struggle in the early game relative to other classes, as they lack mobility and consistent resource generation, but they are a dominant force in the endgame. Next, we have the Necromancer, the Master of the Dead. If you want to be a classic summoner or a caster of dark magic, the Necro is for you.
I actually like the lore of the Necromancer too. I just wish it was more based around like dark magic rather than just dealing with these NPCs that just follow you around everywhere.
Necromancers can cast bone spells, like summoning and hurling a bone spear, or trapping enemies in a bone prison. They can cast blood spells, like a blood nova, or transforming into an invulnerable blood mist. They can even get up close and personal, wielding either two-handed scythes or one-handed weapons and shields, and they can hurl shadow magic scythes at enemies from afar. They can also cast curses.
I would really like something. Did any of you guys, I don't know if you saw Vox Machina, that series? That weapon that Grog was carrying around, that evil weapon that would just suck up all of the blood of all the enemies that he killed, but it would slowly start to take over his mind and his control. It would be cool if the Necromancer had something like that, like every enemy that you hit just slowly bleeds them, but it's also you absorb it and makes you more powerful,
to inflict upon enemies. And then they have corpse skills. They can transform the bodies of their dead foes into skeletons to join their army, or literally explode the corpses to deal damage to other enemies. Seriously, corpse explosion, one of the most fun skills in any video game, a staple since Diablo 2. The Necromancer has 3 ultimates, which we'll showcase here. Army of the Dead summons hordes of kamikaze undead that explode onto enemies. Bloodwave reenacts that scene from
the kamikaze ones, that doesn't interest me.
And sends a wave of blood at your enemies. And Bone Storm summons a tornado of bones around you to shred your foes. The Necromancer
Tornado of Bones. That sounds interesting. I like that move.
His unique mechanic is the Book of the Dead, which allows you to customize your Army of the Dead. Wait, that's confusing. Not as in Army of the Dead, your ultimate, your skeletal minions. You get 3 minion types: skeletal warriors, skeletal mages, and a golem. Each of the 3
The golem is what interests me the most.
minion types has 3 subtypes that you can choose. For skeletal warriors, you can go full offense warriors, defensive warriors, or special attack warriors. For skeletal mages, you can go with shadow magic mages, cold magic mages that deal less damage but chill and
See, this is another thing about this game. I mean, we're talking about all these different all these different advances within the classes. After you've already developed all of the skills, then you can actually upgrade the individual skills or kind of micromanage each individual skill or even your NPC characters. And you're really going to have to get familiar with a class before you even understand these mechanics and how it could actually affect your overall damage and your overall gameplay style with that specific class. So honestly, there is so much variability in the mechanics of this game. It's going to keep us all very, very busy for a long time if we decide to play more than one class.
enemies, or bone magic mages that deal more damage but are literally pulling out their bones to throw at enemies so their attacks cost them life. And for your golem, you can pick a bone golem that taunts enemies to pull aggro to itself, a blood golem that drains life from enemies to heal and buff itself, or an iron golem that slams the ground to stun enemies. But if you decide,
Blood golem.
I don't want one of my skill slots occupied by skeletons or
Blood
golem,
golem.
you can choose the fourth option, Sacrifice, which prevents you from being able to spawn this minion type in exchange for a specific buff. Sometimes you may just desire a buff so much that you decide to forego skeletal mages, for instance, or any of the minion types. Now, necromancers do not have direct control over their minions. The minions go out and they do their own thing. You can't direct their attacks. However, each golem has a specific special active ability that you'll want to use when appropriate, and skeletons get a button that you'll want to pop to heal them and give them temporary buffs. A necromancer's resource is called Essence, which generates naturally over time.
Like the Skeksis. Essence.
And can also be generated with basic attacks. On top of this though, necromancers are the only class with a second resource to manage, corpses. When an enemy dies, it leaves behind a corpse. There are other ways that you can generate corpses as well. Some skills, instead of costing essence, consume corpses, like corpse explosion or raising a skeleton. Effective management of both corpses and essence is key to performing your best as a necromancer. Necromancer key passives include Kalan's Edict.
So I didn't actually play as a necromancer during the beta, but that was one of my biggest concerns, is a lot of the abilities are actually reliant on there being corpses around for you to be able to fully utilize your character skills. And if you're fighting a boss, that's one of the reasons why I think they make these bosses spawn just like really weak standard enemies every once in a while, is because the necromancer needs that. Otherwise he would, a lot of these bosses would just wipe the floor with him.
Which buffs minions, Ossified Essence, which buffs bone spells, Rathma's Vigor, which buffs blood spells, and Shadow Blight, which buffs shadow damage builds. Now, the Necromancer is the lowest mobility class in the game. Its only mobility power actually makes you move slower, not faster, while letting you pass through enemies. Because of this, it'll suffer in any content based on speed. But outside of that, the Necro is strong in both the early game and the end game, with the ability to deal both good single target and area damage, deliver good crowd control, and build up tankiness. Onto the Rogue. This is...
Yeah, I mean, if you guys remember the blood magic build or whatever in the beta, at least the early beta, you could essentially create, this is like by level 25, create a invincible necromancer.
Is your archer class, but also your agile melee class. If you want to be highly mobile, either keeping enemies at range and peppering them with arrows, or dashing into and out of melee while unleashing rapid flurries of stabs, or some combination of both, the Rogue is for you. Rogues have a variety of ranged and melee skills that let you shoot arrows, throw knives, or just stabby stab, and ranged melee and hybrid playstyles are all viable. Rogues have tons of mobility skills to let you zip across a battlefield like no one else. You also have trap skills like caltrops and poison traps, and ninja skills like smoke bombs and stealth. And then rogues also have imbuement skills. You can choose to imbue your weapons with either cold, poison, or shadow damage, each having different effects. Rogues have 3 ultimates, which we'll showcase here. There's Death Trap.
Yeah, I mean, Shadow, the Rogue, like I said, it's been my favorite class. That's what I played during the beta. I definitely felt like the Rogue got nerfed a little bit in the server slam. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I did a completely different type of build during the server slam than I did during the first beta. So maybe I just kind of built him out wrong, but I was really trying to build like a powerful melee type rogue in the server slam, and man, like I just was not impressed by level 20. And then when I did a sorcerer build during the server slam for the last few hours, I mean, even by like level 7 of the, I could instantly tell the difference with the sorcerer. I was like, oh my gosh, the sorcerer is so much more powerful. you know, even within like the first freaking dungeon, I was clearing rooms with the sorcerer. So anyways, hopefully they've figured out the right balance for the rogue, because the rogue was really, really powerful in that first beta. If you had the right build and the right items, he was super powerful.
Trap, which lets you place a trap that does big damage in an area once an enemy moves within range. You got Rain of Arrows, which blasts 2 waves of arrows across the entire screen like it's the movie 300. It's such a cool visual. And then you have Shadow Clone, which creates a shadowy duplicate of yourself that mimics your actions for 15 seconds, dealing a fraction of your damage. To support...
Not a fraction. It's like somewhere between 60 to 80% of your damage. It's not a fraction. That's a lot. I mean, I guess it is like kind of a fraction, but not like most people use that term, meaning like a very small amount. It's not a small amount. It's a good portion of your damage.
Hybrid playstyles, rogues can equip both a ranged weapon, either a bow or crossbow, and 2 one-handed melee weapons. Depending on what skill you use, you'll automatically swap to the correct weapon. But even if you're on a pure bow build, your melee weapons will still be useful as stat sticks. While their damage doesn't contribute to your bow skill damage, the attributes on the items, the affixes, these are always helping you, like a legendary property. The rogue's class...
Yeah, I guess that's something that I overlooked. I didn't even think about that during the betas, is if you have like legendary items that have special abilities associated with them, those are also contributing to everything that you're doing and dealing damage with your knives or your blades.
Mechanic is the ability to pick one of 3 specializations. Combo points make your basic skills generate up to 3 combo points, and then your core skills consume combo points for extra effects. In general, the more combo points, the more powerful the effect. So it creates something of a rhythm game where you ideally want to do 3 basic attacks followed by a core attack, or you otherwise work out a cadence that works for you in the right situation. Maybe you know that to finish off this enemy you don't need all 3 combo points, you can stop at 2. This is the most skill intensive specialization. Then there's Inner Sight. An enemy on your screen will randomly become marked. If you attack a marked enemy, that fills up your Inner Sight gauge. And once your gauge is full, you have unlimited resource for 4 seconds.
You know, so the Shadow Imbue build focused largely on Inner Sight. And I'll tell you what, like, I did not enjoy that style of gameplay. I don't like the game saying like, hey, you know, there's a little fishy little baddie over here. Go attack that guy and we'll give you a bonus. That just felt like it removed me from the immersion of the game. It just did not feel natural in any way. So I'll tell you, I mean, I'll probably play around with Inner Sight. Maybe my opinion on it will change. But when I played with Inner Sight during the server slam, I preferred the combo.
Seconds, allowing you to spam skills to your heart's content. If you have a resource-thirsty build, this can be really effective, especially against bosses, since you'll always keep your Inner Sight mark on them. Also really effective for builds that have damage windows. You're gonna lay out your max damage when you're in that Inner Sight. Then lastly, there's Preparation. Every 100 resource you spend reduces the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 4 seconds. And using your ultimate resets the cooldowns of your other skills. So if you're using an ultimate and a lot of cooldown skills, this can be a really inviting option. The rogue's resource is called Energy. It generates quickly over time. You start off at 100% and your basic skills don't generate energy by default. Rogues have 5 key passives to choose from. Close Quarters Combat, which is for hybrid builds, giving you your maximum buff when you're...
Yeah, Close Quarters. I mean, I think a really cool type of build is to build one where it's like you teleport in, you attack the bad guys, and then you retreat back out. And then that way you can kind of do a ton of damage, get in a lot of critical strikes very quickly, and then kind of retreat back and regroup, kind of like, do I need to heal myself? All this other stuff.
Attacking with both ranged and melee skills. Exposure, which is for trap rogues. Momentum, which focuses on getting buffs by either hitting crowd-controlled enemies or by hitting enemies from behind, mostly for ninja-like rogue builds. You have Precision, which is for ranged rogues, and then you have Victimize, which specializes in a new mechanic called Vulnerable. Basically, there are ways you can inflict the vulnerable condition upon enemies, and enemies who are vulnerable take, at base, 20% increased damage. Rogues, more than any other class, can specialize in making enemies vulnerable, dealing more damage to vulnerable enemies.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about the class is just how you can combine a lot of these abilities with like vulnerability and critical strike and all these other things to really kind of figure out a pattern of how to attack them or a sequence of attacks of your skills to really be able to do a ton of damage to some of these bad guys.
And getting other benefits from making enemies vulnerable. Again, for more information on vulnerable and other mechanics, I got my video here. Overall, rogues are an excellent class all around. Their high mobility lets them handle content efficiently, and they can bring big damage. But they can be squishy, and they're generally a class that requires more skill.
Like I said, that's how I died during the server slam. I mean, I was going up against the Ashava alone, which means that the Ashava was only targeting me when I went out there. Nobody else, right? And he only had to hit me twice. He hit me twice successively because my power hadn't regenerated enough for me to be able to like either do the dodge or to get out of the way. And then it's like, next thing I know, I was dead. Only took 2 hits. So that is one of the biggest worries about the rogue, and that's why it's so valuable to play in a group, especially with some of these really beefy characters that can take like 4 or 5 hits from an Ashava and not have to worry about it too much. They have time to go and click on the their healing potion before it's too late.
To correctly line up all your damage and not die. And lastly, on to Sorcerer. This is your classic elemental mage. If you want to be a pure spellcaster, launching different spells at enemies, this is the class for you. The Sorcerer casts cold, fire, and lightning spells. You can throw fireballs or frozen orbs or electrocute enemies with chain lightning. You can protect yourself with fire shields.
I love the chain lightning. I just found that so freaking awesome. Anyway, Sorcerer class, very fun class. I didn't go into it thinking all that excited about playing as a sorcerer, and then next thing I know, like I decided, okay, like I should give the sorcerer a try, because in Diablo 3, like I beat Diablo 3, but I never tried the sorcerer class. So I was like, all right, I should try the sorcerer class. My brother-in-law plays the sorcerer. That's his favorite class. And so I went in and I was playing with him early on. I was like, goodness, this is freaking fun. And he is super powerful. Chain lightning, man, that's awesome. It's fun.
You can freeze enemies with Frost Nova. You can cast Teleport to travel across the battlefield instantly, which apparently is a lightning spell. You can summon Fire Hydras, Ice Blades, or Lightning Spears to automatically attack enemies while you do other stuff, like attacking enemies with your other spells, or not dying. You can call down icy
or not dying.
Fiery meteors. You can conjure firewalls and ball lightning. The Sorcerer has 3 ultimates, which we'll showcase here. Deep Freeze turns you into an invulnerable icicle for a few seconds, dealing cold damage in a big area around you and chilling enemies. Inferno summons a giant fire snake that burns enemies over time. And Unstable Currents supercharges you with lightning, making you randomly trigger other lightning spells whenever you cast a shock spell. The Sorcerer's unique mechanic is the enchantment system. You eventually unlock 2 skill slots that are called enchantment slots. You can put any of your skills in here, as long as you have a skill point in it, and every skill has something special that it does when in an enchantment.
See, that's what I mean. Like, in order to even know what's available for the sorcerer, like, I mean, I know that there's going to be tutorials and stuff where they kind of tell you about all these different enchantment spots, But man, it's all these characters. You really have to dedicate time in terms of figuring them out beyond just a skill tree if you want to build like a really effective build class with them. So that's what's cool about them. Each one has their own kind of special thing going on once you get to an advanced level with them.
Slot. But basically, enchantment slots are passive. A skill in an enchantment slot will either give you some passive buff, or it'll have a chance to automatically trigger under some condition. A sorcerer's resource is called mana, the classic. Mana generates automatically over time, and the sorcerer's basic attacks do not generate mana by default. The sorcerer has a whopping 6 key passives to choose from, 2 for each element. Avalanche is for lucky hit-based cold builds. Again, video mechanics, blah blah blah. But basically, this passive helps you spam your cold spells faster by removing their resource cost on a certain trigger. Combustion is for damage over time based fire builds. The more you set enemies on fire, the more damage you deal. Esu's Ferocity is for critical strike based fire builds. Overflowing Energy is for cooldown based.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep on saying is the legendary and epic items. A lot of the different skills and the effectiveness of different builds for each type of class is going to be highly dependent on the types of item synergistic item abilities that they create for the legendary and epic items. So you kind of saw that with the shadow imbue of the rogue class. They had this shadow imbue, or they had this ability where you would have twisting daggers that went in, and then, you know, with the twisting daggers, you stick them into the enemy, and then like a second or two later, they come out of the enemy, and then they come back to you, your character, and they deal damage to anybody that they hit, any enemies they hit on the way back. Well, what this rotating blades power did on these weapons that you could get is, you know, you would do the twisting daggers, and then on their way back, the daggers would rotate around your character like 2 or 3 times and deal damage to the enemies over and over again. And what that would do is just like recharge. I mean, you would end up doing so much damage because of the synergy of this one power associated with that skill. It was unbelievable. I mean, that's why the rogue was dealing so much damage. But you know what? Like when it came to the server slam, I actually had a lot of legendary items during the server slam. I was decked out. Even within just a few hours of playing, I had, and I wasn't farming legendary items. My character was entirely decked out with legendary items, but I didn't have that one ability. So I was trying to kind of create that same type of shadow imbue, melee type of attack character for when I went up against the Ashava, and I just was not doing a ton of damage. So, you know, that gives you an idea of just how powerful finding the right synergistic legendary item or weapon is in this game. And that's why I think they say that the Barbarian is going to be so goddamn powerful later in the game, because he's got so many weapon slots. He has so many opportunities to create all of these synergistic combinations.
Lightning builds, which helps reduce your cooldowns. Shatter is for cold builds that focus on freezing enemies solid. And Veer's Mastery is for close range lightning builds. Overall, the Sorcerer is a class that has great mobility thanks to teleport, lots of crowd control powers, and does huge area damage, and is just an all-around really robust class. So, that covers the classes. How strong any given class or build is subject to change as the game gets better.
Yeah, thank you, Riker. Great video. Great video. Not my favorite video of yours, but you did a great job on this one. I appreciate it. Some very good information in there, especially with details about developing the classes after you've already developed all of your skills. That was good information. So guys, hey man, I'm excited for Diablo 4. I'm going to be covering a lot more content coming up. Go ahead and subscribe. You know what? This channel, like, I'm not going to, it's not all pizzazz and wow and everything like this. This is like a conversational channel. You come here because you want to talk, get to know other people that are here participating in the live streams, have a good time, make actual friends. You know, I don't care if I have like, if I only get like 100 subscribers. If we're just here chatting, having a good time, that's all that I care about, honestly. I'm not doing this with this idea that I'm going to become, you know, like the next Aspen Gold or Moist Critical with 25 million subs or Markiplier. You know what I mean? That's not the intent of this channel. The intent of this channel is for me to immerse myself more into the actual gaming world, build relationships within the gaming world with you guys, with the people watching, you know, and maybe too, if you guys are into streaming and all that type of stuff, maybe we can do some collabs, all that fun jazz. So anyways, like and subscribe. I hope you guys have a good day, and we will see you on the next one. Have a good one.